You are listening to the Batflip Podcast, a baseball podcast from Belly Up Sports and the Belly Up Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Damian and Matt.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Batflip Podcast. My name is Damian here with my co-host, Matt, coming to you on June 21st of 2021. Got a quick little episode for you today. We got some injury news, a couple call-ups, MLB issuing a memo about mudding of the baseballs, and then we're going to look back at our preseason award predictions as we are nearing the halfway point of the season, and then we'll jump to Players of the Week, like always, to finish the episode up. But before we get to all of that, how are you doing, Matt?
I'm doing pretty good. I've had a pretty good week, and just hanging out, um, enjoying the summer, and getting ready for some holidays coming up here, the 4th of July in a couple weeks, and just doing pretty well. How about yourself?
Doing all right. Cannot complain. Had a good Father's Day this weekend. Spent it with my dad, and wish all the dads out there happy Father's Day, even if it's a little late here. But just been excited watching some baseball this week, even though the Dodgers have been struggling pretty bad. But it's been exciting. There's been some good stuff going around the game so far. But let's go ahead and jump right in. We'll start with our first injury news, and it's a guy who's already on the IL, but has been confirmed to be out for the season, and that is Anthony Rendon of the Los Angeles Angels.
Yeah, that's unfortunate for the Angels. You know, Rendon, uh, that contract looks pretty bad right now, and I hate to say it, but it's a wrist injury. And obviously, with a wrist injury, you never know how that's going to work out. But, he's a guy who was unbelievable for the Nationals when he was healthy. But, when he was with the Nationals, he had some issues with his. He had some issues with injuries. I mean, there was a few seasons that he only played 120 games just a couple times, I believe. So he was, he dealt with that in Washington. His last 3 years in Washington were really good, um, but he never played 150 games other than 2016. So then when he got to Los Angeles, the Angels, he had injuries last year. 2020, he was good there. I don't know. People for some reason were underwhelmed by him, but he was one of the best players in the league in 2020. And then this year, more injuries. I mean, the talent level's still good. He's still a really good player. He was worth one WAR this year, but before the injury, which at this point he's on pace for like two or three, before and 45 games. I mean, he'd be on pace for what, 4 WAR. It's really good player, but you're gonna miss him. And I mean, you're looking at a guy with 5 years left. He's a free agent 2020. He signed through 2026 at an average annual value of $35 million a year. So you better hope that whatever this injury is heals up and he comes back next year and plays well. Because right now, I mean, you've gotten less than a season's worth of games out of that contract in the first 3 years of it. So it's unfortunate, and I hate it for Rendon because I like him as a player. I think he's really good, but man, that's a tough break for the Angels because that team seems like they just can never catch a break with the injury front.
Yeah, and the Angels, you need Rendon to be healthy to make that lineup successful. You have Trout and Ohtani in there, but you kind of need that third high-profile hitter to have consistent at-bats, especially with the younger guys that they're trying to bring up with Joe Adell and Brandon Marsh and Jared Walsh, who has shown flashes at times, but that lineup just needs another consistent hitter in it. And Rendon has shown flashes this year, still 106 WRC plus. I mean, the stat line doesn't look great, but you can see he had a really low batting average on balls in play compared to his career numbers. So you expected that to take a step up, throughout the season. But it really does suck with this wrist injury and him battling injuries throughout this contract. And they, like you said, they really do need to get him healthy going into next year so that they can make that push and just get some luck there. Because it was team started off really hot and they've kind of came back down to earth and kind of made a lot of people, that expected them to be really good at the season look like a fool so far. But, it sucks for Rendon, sucks for the Angels because I felt like they had a good chance to at least make a wild card push. And it doesn't seem if you have a guy like Rendon out that you might be able to do that anymore.
Yeah, it's tough, but and then maybe they can replace him. You never know.
Yeah, you never know. Deadline's coming up, so maybe they make a move for another good hitter in there. But going from Anaheim to Los Angeles, and we're going to talk about Mookie Betts, who had to go onto the IL for a rib fracture after colliding with Cody Bellinger in the outfield.
Yeah, I mean Mookie Betts was having a great year. It already 148 WRC plus. Already put up 3.3 wins above replacement on the season. 17 home runs is I think top 10 in the National League. One off of being tied for second in the National League. 18 is second. And it's unfortunate for the Dodgers to lose Betts. They've kind of been struggling a little bit lately. I mean, compared to what you expected from the Dodgers, and having Betts out doesn't help. That doesn't help them, especially with the Padres hot on their tail. But I think this team's deep enough to where it's not going to be that big of a deal at the end of the day. Because Betts, this isn't like something that's going to keep him out for you know a long time. It's just going to be a couple weeks. So.
Yeah, they did. They said they expected it to be a couple weeks, but it could go into the 3 to 4 week mark depending on how the CT scans look. It was unfortunate, that it happened at this time as they are kind of really struggling, and he was one of the bright spots for the team throughout the season so far because he'd been the guy, even though when they were struggling, he'd still put up good at bats. And it was kind of a freak play, like they were going for a fly ball. They didn't even seem to like that they hit that hard. And then he was kind of grimacing a little bit, but not much. And then I actually wonder, it was when Tyler Anderson was going for his no hitter, and it was in the ninth inning. There was a fly ball to right field. I wonder if when they made that collision a little bit in the beginning, if it did something, and then because it was in the first inning, and then trying to save the no hitter, he did like a full out Superman dive and landed directly on his like right side to his chest. So I wonder if that might have like made the fracture even a little bit worse, trying to do that play. But hopefully it's only a 2 week thing, and he can get back out there because their team that needs him as their leadoff hitter to be in there and give consistent at bats for sure. But we'll go ahead and stay in the National League West. And this one's more of a minor injury. We're not even quite sure the severity of it quite yet. But Manny Machado sprained his ankle yesterday, or actually on Sunday. It looked quite bad, but so far they said the scans and stuff haven't shown quite as bad as what it looked like, and that he should be able to avoid the IL as of right now.
Yeah, I mean, Manny Machado has been having a monster year so far. The BABIP is a little bit inflated at 364, but either way, I mean, he's putting up a ridiculous stat line of 164 WRC plus 328 average, 400 on base, 545 slugging. He's been a good base runner. He's stolen 7 bases, but his metrics have been great on the base running front. Great defense as usual for Manny Machado, and 4.3 wins above replacement. That's a great number for him too right now. In fact, that would be for the season. That would be his highest total since 2018 when he put up 7, and we're not even halfway through the season yet. So, obviously it's unfortunate for Manny Machado that he, got injured here. But the good thing is that I think he's going to be okay. There's even talk he might not even have to miss go or have to be put on the injured list. So he should be back pretty soon. And even if he is put on the injured list, it sounds like it wouldn't be like more than a minimal stay. So
Yeah, it shouldn't be a big deal at all. And he's having a great season, and they kind of need him to be in that lineup, with missing Tatis so far. And the way season he's had to help them, stay right in that NL West hunt while Tatis kind of recovers. They need Machado in that lineup because if they lose both of them, man, it's gonna be tough for them for sure. But let's move over to our prospect call-ups of the week. And the first one we got was Oneil Cruz of the Pittsburgh Pirates. He got called up, and he's made an immediate impact. He yesterday, I think it was within 3 innings, he already had a triple that he ran like over 30 feet per second, which if you don't know, 30 feet per second is highly elite in the game. And then he threw the hardest ball as an infielder this year at 96.7 miles an hour.
yeah, so Oneil Cruz is a guy who a lot of people really thought should be in the majors to start the season this year. And while they did have an argument for that, he really was struggling to start the year at AAA, but he started to turn his at bats around. Get going a little bit over the past few weeks. So the Pirates finally decided to call him up, and obviously with those with what you just said, and then what he's done today as well. He's already got he's got a hit today as well, and he's looked pretty good at the plate. As you said, in the field, made that great throw. I mean, there's some questions about him being able to stick at shortstop long term. He's a little bit big. He doesn't have the quickest feet, but obviously the arm plays at shortstop. So, I mean, that's a ridiculous cannon of an arm.
Heck, a
Um,
little big. He's
so,
6'7".
well, yeah. I mean, he's big. I'm talking about big for shortstop.
I
He's
know.
just
I'm just saying,
yeah.
like,
I mean, he'd
even
be
that,
big for
like,
any position, but
yeah, they were talking about like Seager was big for 6'4", 6'5". This dude's
yeah,
6'7" at shortstop.
yeah. So he is quick, but anytime you got such long legs to be 6'7", I mean, your feet can't be. You know, there's only but this guy, it takes a special talent to do it, and it sounds like he might be that guy. We just don't know. So, um, but we'll see what happens with Oneil Cruz. It's exciting to see him up in the big leagues finally. Um, and he could very easily be that guy that goes on a tear for the rest of the season.
Yeah, and it made a little sense for the Pirates to do it. I mean, they basically what they did is they held him down a couple days after the Super 2 deadline, to where he won't get Super 2 for arbitration. So everyone kind of knew that's what they were doing, but they were kind of just saying more development wise. But it's good to see him finally up there and
Yeah.
showing what he's had so far.
Yeah, and in an Oneil Cruz's case, I don't think it's totally. Obviously they were waiting on the Super 2, but I think at the same time it's not totally a Chris Bryant, Ronald Acuna situation where they send him down for like 2 weeks and then bring him up to save a year at service time. Like
No, yeah,
it's he did have some things he needed to work on because when he started the season this year, he was striking out a ton in the first month. Didn't look good at the plate. Even now, like his numbers in AAA, he finally got his line back to league average, but he had a 232 average, a 336 on base, and a 422 slugging for a 103 WRC plus. That's not that good of a line for a hotshot prospect to get called up and be, obviously you can get called up with that line and he deserves to be in the big leagues. I'm not saying that that's not the case, but that's not exactly knocking the door to the big leagues down type numbers. So but he did do a good job, at, turning it around a little bit, getting going, and now he might very well take the big leagues by storm. But definitely a guy that is going to be exciting to watch. Makes the Pirates a lot more fun to see him at the big league level.
yeah. And then if they're able to, I mean, they've already signed Key Brian Hayes. If they're able to keep Brian Reynolds around too, that's a good top three to start building your your major league team around for a team that's kind of been on the back burner for the last couple of years.
For sure.
But moving over to our other prospect call up, and we mentioned him at the beginning of the year that he was supposed to be on the major league roster out of spring training. Ended up having a foot injury. He's fully healed up from that, went through a rehab assignment, and Riley Greene finally got his call ups in the major leagues this past week, and he's looked really good so far.
Yeah, Riley Greene's looked good. He's a guy that I think, good. He's just kind of a good all around prospect as an outfielder. I think he's going to be a decent fielder. He needs to work on it. He's not the super fastest guy, but he's got good hit tool and good power. He's a strikeout guy. At AAA in 2021 in 40 games, 27% strikeout rate. AA 2021, 84 games, 27% strikeout rate. So he strikes out a lot. He's going to have to work on his swing and miss at the big league level. In fact, the lowest strikeout rate he ever had in the minors was 24.1% in 2019 at low A or at high A. So, he's going to have to get better about that. But the projection systems actually like him not to strike out a ton, more than that. And I mean, so far at the big league level, he's looked pretty good in his first, I guess he's played 4 games. This is his 4th game today.
Yeah.
So, he's walked 5 times already. So that's nice to see. Only 3 strikeouts, so not too bad there. That'll be something to monitor. But Riley Greene's got a great swing, and he can hit the ball hard, and he's got good power, and I think he's gonna be a really good player. But he's gonna take a little bit of time to fully develop, I think. But he's a good looking player right now. So good to see him in the big leagues.
Yeah, and he's only 21 years old. I expect
Yeah.
in a couple years he'll be a middle of the order bat that a lot of teams will start having a fear. Like Riley Greene, he does it all. He can hit for power. He'll be one of those feared hitters for a long time for sure. But let's go ahead and move on to our next subject, and that was that the MLB today issued a memo to the teams about the formal process of mudding up the baseball and the storage of them. So if you don't know what mudding up the baseball means, it's when the balls come, they come in the box inside the bag, and it's how you take it out and you put this substance on it that I forget where they get it from. It's somewhere in Delaware, but it's called mud or well, I forget the actual name for it, but a clubhouse attendant basically takes the stuff, they rub it all over the ball, and then they store the ball in the humidor. And basically, through MLB looking at the video from different clubhouses, they had saw a discrepancy between the clubhouse attendants, the way they were mudding up the baseball and the process behind it, and causing maybe some of the slicker balls that we've been seeing. And they actually got called out over the weekend by Michael Lorenzen, saying that the balls are so inconsistent that you never know what you have. It was actually after a ball slipped out of his hand and he hit Justin Upton in the head. So they issued a formal thing today about how it has to be on the mud, or how the mudding process has to go, and then now how they have to actually store them in the humidor. So there's a set process for all of that now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that while I don't know how much this affects the everyone talking about the balls are unjuiced or the balls are not carrying whatever. I hope this at least addresses some of the consistency that people have been talking about. People have been all upset about the balls not being consistent, and you might get one that's like super slick and one that's grippy, and it changes from ball to ball. And hopefully this addresses that. So we'll see. Maybe that'll fix some of the issue they have.
Yeah, and that's what I think what people are hoping for is just more consistency out of it. If you know what ball you're going to get, then you can work to resolve stuff around it. But if you don't know, then that's the problem. If you're getting one ball is super sticky, and then the next ball you've been throwing, your 80 pitches into a game, and the ball you get is all of a sudden like it's straight out of the package, like it hasn't even been mudded up or whatever. That's going to be an issue because you've been throwing something for 80 ways or 80 times, and then this one's completely different. So it I'm interested to see how it goes, and there's even been some talk that they've been trying some other pre-tacked stuff and different forms of a mud or whatever in the minor leagues. So it is a thing that's been a big conversation, and I'm interested to see now that we have this memo what it looks like going forward and what the consistency actually is of the baseballs. But let's go ahead and jump over to. I mentioned at the end of last week's episode that we would jump back, as we're nearing the halfway point in the year, and kind of just look back at our early season predictions or before the season predictions on the awards, and see how stupid we look now. But we'll start in the National League, and for the National League Rookie of the Year, Matt, you had actually it's fitting for today's episode. You had Oneil Cruz. For Cy Young, you had Corbin Burns, and then for MVP, you had Juan Soto.
Yeah, so we can start looking at the rookie of the year here. I picked in the National League O'Neal Cruz, and obviously, we don't know anything about what O'Neal Cruz is going to do at the big league level this year because he's played one game,
Yeah.
so or two game, I guess 2 games if you include tonight, but yeah, that's been I think he'll probably do well, but you're looking at the NL, some of the candidates here, I think you look at Brendan Donovan, who's come out of nowhere for St. Louis, has been really good. Michael Harris has already been worth 1.3 WAR in just 22 games for the Braves, coming up straight from Double A. I don't think anybody really expected to see him in the big leagues at all this year. Luis Gonzalez has been really good for the Giants. Alec Thomas, a top prospect, come up and done pretty well with the Diamondbacks. Jack Sawinski's hit 11 homers for Pittsburgh. And then you look at the pitching front. Obviously people kind of forget about looking at pitchers when it comes to the Rookie of the Year awards. And Spencer Strider has been had a phenomenal start for the Braves. He actually really struggled tonight, but in 44 innings, a 2.45 ERA, and Mackenzie Gore has been everything that the Padres had hoped for. Even though he's struggled a little bit lately, but he's been really good. A 3.64 ERA in 54 innings so far this year. He's been worth 1.1 WAR. So that's just some guys to look at, but I think it's kind of wide open still because the guys who are really on top are small sample size or kind of under heralded guys. Like, I mean, Michael Harris is a top prospect, but that's only 22 games, so you don't know if he's going to be able to keep this going. He's got a 417 batting average on balls in play too. Brendan Donovan's kind of an unheralded guy. You don't know if this is just a hot start. He's also got a 381 batting average on balls in play. So and then you kind of look at those pitchers like Spencer Strider. He's a kind of a weird pitcher, and he just started throwing, pitching as a starter. And then Mackenzie Gore as well, a guy who started hot, but he's also a guy that his mechanics can get a little bit out of shape sometimes. So you don't know, he might go through a stretch. And one other kind of honorable mention to that is Camilo Doval. We haven't really I didn't really mention him because he's a reliever, but he's been really good for the Giants as a closer. So but yeah, definitely an interesting race here for National League Rookie of the Year so far.
Yeah, and you mentioned it's wide open. For my picks for Rookie of the Year, I had Seiya Suzuki. If you would have said 2 weeks into the season, I would say that was the guy to win the award. But he really cooled off, and then he's been out, I believe, since May 26th with the finger issue. He just went to Arizona to keep continuing the rehab at the Cubs spring training complex. Still don't know when he's even going to be back. But the overall line, what he was looking at was a 245 average, 344 on base, 432 slugging, a 114 WRC plus. But a lot of those numbers were, like I mentioned, in the first couple weeks of the season, he was really, really hot and then kind of cooled off and took that adjustment period that I think a lot of people expected him to have to get to. But that was who I had for my Rookie of the Year pick in the NL. But you mentioned guys like Brendan Donovan's been really good. Michael Harris has been phenomenal in his 22 games. It is completely wide open. Any of these guys can still win it, and I wouldn't even be surprised if by the end of the season, even though he just got called up right now, that Oneil Cruz is still or in the hunt or the front runner at one point. Because I think if there's still over half a season, I mean that might get a little bit of a knock, but nobody's really ran away with it. So if he does what everyone expects him to do and keeps up the start what he's looked like and does that for the rest of the season, there's an easy chance that he's in the hunt for that.
So if you were to pick right now, who so far has been Rookie of the Year, who would you pick?
Right now,
Yeah.
I would probably have to just give it to Brendan Donovan.
Okay.
I just he doesn't have the he's not a power hitter like that, but just the consistent at bats he's doing. He's a high on base guy. He doesn't slug much, but I just think Brendan
Yeah.
Donovan's kind of surprised me the most so far. You mentioned Michael Harris as a top prospect. Yeah, had he been up for the entire season so far, I think I would have picked him. But just with 22 games, I don't think I can really give that nod right now. And then Mackenzie Gore is probably a third for me
Yeah.
right now.
I think I'd go Spencer Strider right now. Um, but even with tonight's start, he's been really insane this year.
I feel the only problem with Strider is that he only has 4 games started, and
Right,
if
but when he's pitched out of the bullpen, he's pitched multiple innings every time, like 3 innings apiece. Like he's only got 10 innings pitched fewer than Mackenzie Gore on the season. So it's one of those things like he had it's not like he hadn't pitched a lot of innings, even though he did come out of the bullpen a lot. But and Michael Harris you could go with, but 22 games, that's such a small
yeah,
sample size. I mean, it's hard to pick in that sample size. But Brendan Donovan would be a good pick as well. I think he's been great. It's almost like they copied Tommy Edman and said, here's another one.
all right.
So at the plate, at least.
All right, well, let's go over and look at the Cy Young Awards where you had Corbin Burns and I had Sandy Alcantara.
Yeah. So looking at the Cy Young Award here, I think that obviously your pick has been pretty good. So both of our picks have been good so far. Sandy Alcantara putting up 99 innings already in 14 starts here in the middle of June. That's something we don't see very often anymore. And if he stays healthy, he's on pace for if he he could get 18 more starts. So you're looking at well over 200 innings, probably 220, 230 for him this year, and he's done that and putting up a sub 3 FIP and a sub 2 ERA on the season. He's been really, really good. 2.7 WAR. And then of course my pick, Corbin Burns. He's been every bit as good as advertised. The home run rate's been a little bit higher than we saw last year. But he's still getting the ball on the ground pretty well, and his xFIP shows a 268 xFIP. Is good especially compared to his his FIP is a little bit higher than that, but 231 ERA on the season and 85 innings for him. That's one thing I like to see with Corbin Burns so far is 85 innings. Last year that was kind of his downfall or his shortfall, even though he did win the Cy Young. Was he only pitched like 160, 170 innings. This year he's on pace to be closer to 200. So that's something you really like to see from Corbin Burns is he's been able to go out there every fifth day and get you innings. Even though part of that last year, I think he missed like 3 starts because of COVID last year or something. So, but some other guys who have been great. Zach Wheeler's been really good for the Phillies, especially after having a horrible start to the season. Max Fried's been extremely good for the Braves. He's having his best season so far. Joe Musgrove is a lot of people's front runner, along with Sandy Alcantara, the co-front runners, kind of. He's been incredible for the Padres. Um, you know, you look at Aaron Nola has been really solid. Tyler Anderson even has been good for the Dodgers. So there's been a lot of good stuff going on, and but yeah, I think right now if I had to pick, it'd be Sandy Alcantara.
Yeah, I think honestly, I think right now it's Alcantara, but I mean, I don't believe Musgrove's all that far behind.
He's not far
I mean,
behind.
the innings, the 20 innings difference. I mean, people would make an argument for that, but the numbers he's been putting up as well, it deserves every bit of consideration for it. And I wouldn't be surprised that Alcantara maybe starts getting laid off a little bit, either in the middle or later in the season. He's been going like 7, 8 innings, even 9 innings sometimes every start. Like, I think it'll probably come back down a little bit when the innings will kind of even out over the long haul. But he's been absolutely insane this year to start with. And, Burns has been, I think he even struggled a little bit to start the season, and then he's really turned it around as well. So I don't think either one of us made bad picks there for sure. But looking over at our NL MVP race, we both actually picked Juan Soto as the MVP so far, and that is not looking too great at the moment.
Yeah, looking at Juan Soto, I think that we aren't. I don't think we were as far off as it's looking right now, because Juan Soto is a guy who is never going to run a 213 BABIP for a full season. In fact, I mean his plate discipline numbers aren't quite as good as they were last year, but I mean last year, 22% walk rate. I mean he's at 18% on the walk rate this year. That's still really good, and a 15% strikeout rate, still really low. That average is going to come up. He's going to have a huge second half. I think the thing that hurts me with Juan Soto is the defense. He's been back to being a really, really, really poor defender this year. That hurts him a lot. But I mean, he's still a great player. 14 home runs. He started to hit the ball, hit for power a lot more. And the projection systems absolutely love him to have a 160, 170 WRC plus the rest of the season. So I still like Juan Soto, even though with his start he's probably not going to win MVP. Looking at the candidates for MVP right now, Manny Machado is definitely the top guy right now. Paul Goldschmidt's been extremely good. He's probably been the best hitter in the National League, with Manny Machado having been the best overall all-around player. You look at Mookie Betts has been really good. Even Tommy Edman and even Dansby Swanson's been incredible. 3 WAR for Swanson, 3.3 for Edman. Bryce Harper has been DHing a lot because of the injury, but he's been great at the plate. Um, those are just kind of some guys to look at with the MVP race right now. Probably the front runners there.
Yeah, I think that the easy top three at the moment is probably Machado, Goldschmidt, and Betts.
Yeah.
And especially now with Mookie being injured, that'll probably drop him down a little bit, especially if he's out for the couple weeks. And then who knows with Machado. Goldschmidt's been insane so far, but I think it's kind of the three-headed race at the moment. If anyone from the Cardinals is going to win it, it's going to be Goldschmidt. I just think with the power numbers that the people put up, I don't think Tommy Edman will probably get enough consideration as much as he probably should anymore. Um, but just kind of a way about it. But not too bad, not too bad there. A couple of our picks looked good, a couple of our picks looked bad, but overall, I don't think it's the worst we've made so far. I mean, I picked Francisco Lindor and Blake Snell last year, so I'm
Yeah.
already off to a better start than that. So let's jump over to our American League, and we'll start with Rookies of the Year. You have Spencer Torkelson, and I picked Bobby Witt Jr.
Yeah, so we'll start with Spencer Torkelson, who's been one of the worst players in baseball this year, and it's been really unfortunate for him. You know, he's a guy that I picked him because I thought the floor was going to be really high and that he was kind of a sure thing to have some success early in the big leagues. But it's really been a struggle for him. The swing and miss has been higher than I think a lot of people expected. But honestly, a 256 batting average on balls in play has really hurt him, and that kind of seems to be maybe who he is. And he really needs the power to come through for him to be successful at the big league level. And right now, just 4 home runs in 61 games. That power hadn't been there. So the projection system still like him, and Torkelson also for another thing, it's all bat with him. He has to hit. If he doesn't hit, then you're looking at a guy who, his defense is really not good, even at first base. And his base running is not good. He's slow. So you're looking at a guy who really has to be a special hitter for him to be successful at the big league level. And right now, he hadn't been that guy yet. So, obviously, it's been a rough start for him. He's not so lost at the plate that he can't take his lumps at the big league level. It's kind of one nice thing to say about him. Like, he's walking a pretty good bit. He's not striking out like at a ridiculous rate. 26% is bad, but not ridiculous. And he just needs to start, taking some strides toward, um, his power and getting hitting the ball a little bit better. But right now, I mean, I look at Jeremy Pena. I mean, he's been so good for the Astros. I think he's probably my guy right now.
Yeah, Jeremy Pena has kind of separated himself at the moment as the clear, front runner for Rookie of the Year at this time in where we're at. But Julio Rodriguez, we mentioned how he had such bad luck to start off the season. He's looked really really good as of late. He's at 1.8 WAR already. Bobby Witt Jr. He also really struggled. The numbers still don't look all that great, but he's kind of shown flashes at times. I think he even hit another homer today. But it really has been Pena that's kind of separated himself at the moment. And it will be really interesting to see if he can keep up this offensive production throughout the year. He was a guy who's not well known for being that good of an offensive player, who's more defensive based. So it will be interesting to see, how the numbers even out there, and if Julio Rodriguez keeps up what he's doing, where that will even out over time. But for sure, as of right now, Jeremy Pena has separated himself as the Rookie of the Year at the moment.
Yeah, and I think this is going to be a really interesting race down the stretch because you got Pena, who and Rodriguez, who we talked about. But I mean, Bobby Witt is a guy who he's shown before in his minor league stints, and in certain times like spring training type stuff where he can get hot and be go on a tear for like 2 weeks and can put him squarely back in it. Then you got guys like maybe Adley Rutschman, who he's played 24 games. He's got a small sample so far. The underlying stats look pretty good for him right now. And he's gonna get going at some point, and he could maybe even sneak up there. He's been fantastic defensively already for Baltimore as a catcher, and he's gonna just get better. And that bat's gonna come around. I'm telling you, he has not been he hasn't been great yet at the plate, but the underlying stats are showing that he's gonna be really good. So I think that you could even see him maybe sneak up in there and get close, especially if the top guys at the top kind of level off. Because I mean, Julio Rodriguez is still striking out at a 30% rate this year, and we don't know if Pena is going to keep up this offensive pace. I mean, he's been great offensively, and we just don't know if he's going to keep this up. And Bobby Witt, there's still some things about Bobby Witt's game so far that he's going to have to work on and improve on. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be very intriguing. This four or maybe even a fifth guy. I don't know. Maybe Riley Greene or somebody just goes crazy. getting up in the big leagues. But definitely been interesting for those guys so far. And also, kind of just looking at a pitcher, I know that a lot of people like George Kirby too. So he's not really a front runner for MVP right now, but 3.56 ERA in his first 43 innings is not too bad. So he's also got a 3.33 xFIP. So this is a guy that maybe you end up seeing turn into a pretty good, a pretty good piece at the, maybe gets hot, come down the stretch, and is able to put his name in it too.
Yeah, that would be interesting to see if Kirby can turn it around and get into this battle with these offensive players. I do like Rutschman a lot. I think there's a ton of room for him to grow in there. The only thing is I'm worried in this race at least is the lack of games from him, coming in so late in the season. I just don't. I wonder if they're going to hold that against him to the level of that. But if the bat takes a major swing, the defensive player he's showed so far, it could, he could definitely shove himself in there. But let's go ahead and look at our Cy Young Award predictions. You picked Garrett Cole, and I picked Jose Barrios.
Yeah, so to start off, Garrett Cole has been good. He's kind of been normal Garrett Cole, except the home runs have been a little bit high. But other than, he's also got a pretty high home run per fly ball rate. So part of that is pitching at Yankee Stadium. That's always going to be the case. But he's 13th in WAR for American League pitchers. But he's been really good. And I think he's a guy that could go on a tear the rest of the season and put his name right up in the, back up in that top spot. But so far, Kevin Gossman's been really good. Tariq Skubal has taken a huge step forward for Detroit. That's been nice for them to see. You got Shane McClanahan's been incredible from Tampa Bay. He's probably been the best pitcher, just kind of talent wise. I think he's probably my front runner right now. So definitely some interesting guys up at the top. Bunch of Yankees. So I think there's 4 Yankees starting pitchers in the top 20 in WAR for the American League pitchers. So definitely interesting there. But I think it's gonna be an interesting race because I don't think anybody's really separated themselves so far.
Yeah, I don't think really anybody, like you mentioned, nobody's really separated themselves as the guy so far. McClanahan's been good. Alex Manoah's been really good as well. Kevin Gossman's been pretty decent. Garrett Cole's being what we expect Garrett Cole to be. And there's been a couple other surprises in there, like Verlander coming off the Tommy John surgery at 39. He's been, really good at 2.30 ERA. The FIP is 3.39, but still coming back off Tommy John at 39, that's really insane. Logan Gilbert's been really good as well, 2.28 ERA, a 3.03 FIP. So there's this race is wide open, in the Cy Young mark. My prediction of Jose Barrios hasn't been as great. He has a 5.11 ERA and a 4.91 FIP. I do see a room for improvement. The strikeout rate is down a little bit. He's not getting the ball on the ground as much. So I think that's two easy signs to point at. Like, hey, get the ball on the ground a little bit more and strike some more people out. But at this point, he's out of the Cy Young race at the moment.
He's not getting as many swings and misses as he's gotten in the past.
Yeah.
So maybe it's something mechanical that people are picking him up better or something. But that's hurt him real bad. I've watched a couple of his starts and it just seemed like he could never get a swing and a miss. So
yeah, it's really easy for them to pick up on what he's doing. So I wonder if he's even tipping some pitches right now, because even the movement he has base should just be able to get him a swing and miss, because he has insane movement. But it's been interesting to see for sure. But let's go ahead and move over and look at our MVP race. You picked Vlad Jr. and I picked Byron Buxton.
Yeah, so MVP race. Vlad Jr. It's not that he hasn't been bad at all. He's actually been really good. 142 WRC plus. He's hit 265 with a 357 on base, a 506 slugging. This is probably the floor of what Vlad Jr. can be too, because a 265 batting average on balls in play. He's been pretty unlucky there. But the problem with Vlad Jr. is it's a little bit like I talked about with Torkelson, is that the bat has to be insane for him to be an MVP candidate, because he doesn't run the bases well and he doesn't play the defense very well. So he has to put up a season like he did last year and come close to winning a triple crown type thing for him to be good at for him to be an MVP caliber, or else he's just going to be a really, really solid all-star caliber first baseman. And that's kind of what you've seen so far from Vlad Jr. He's been extremely good, but he's really been more of just an all-star caliber first baseman than he's been a candidate for MVP. But you look at the top of the list here. I think a lot of people are talking about Aaron Judge being the guy. He's been incredible. 25 home runs. 186 WRC plus. That the entire American League has been insane so far. The top 5 or 6 guys have been crazy good. Rafael Devers has been really good. He's kind of set himself apart with his defense and base running being so much improved. He's actually leads in WAR in the American League. Jose Ramirez has been incredible. A 7% strikeout rate for Jose Ramirez is really something to look at. He's got a 190 WRC plus, and of course with him, base running and defense is a big deal too. Judge is actually third, even though everyone's talked about him being such a far away candidate. He's third in WAR, and Mike Trout's right there too. Even though I'm a little bit worried about Mike Trout's strikeouts because he's got a lot of them right now.
Yeah, I mean the strikeout rate, it's bumped up this year for sure with Mike Trout, but he's still been insane. I mean a 290 batting average, 383 on base, 652 slugging, 21 homers, 193 WRC plus. Like it, it feels like Mike Trout could even be getting better still at this point, which is insane to think about. Um, but still fourth in WAR there. Then you look down. I picked Byron Buxton. He's seventh right now. The overall stats: 233 average, 315 on base. Don't look that great, but still 153 WRC plus in 50 games. He has a 2.5 WAR, 19 homers. He's battled some hip injuries this year, which he's always battled injuries. So they've been giving him extra days off, but I would wonder if he had 67, 65 games like a lot of these guys, how close up to the top of that board he'd be. And a 216 batting average on balls in play for Byron Buxton is something that will not continue.
Yeah, I mean, projection systems have his BABIP listed as thinking he's going to run a 280 to 290 BABIP based on his quality of contact and everything, which is obviously way higher than what he's running right now. But the thing I like about Byron Buxton is his plate discipline's gotten better. The strikeout rate's similar to what it's been the last couple of years, but his walks have ticked up. He's at an 8.5% walk rate, almost 9%. So that's a really good sign for Byron Buxton. That's something that's always held him back, is that he had to hit lots of home runs or hit the ball ridiculously hard to make up for that. But so far this year, his plate discipline's been at least average at drawing walks too. So that's been something that's good to see for him.
Yeah, it really has been. Overall though, you mentioned Vlad Jr. He's been really hot the last couple weeks,
Yep.
even kind of showing the MVP type numbers he was doing last year. He's done that in the past couple week stretch. So maybe we're seeing the slow start, but him kicking it back into gear. It really is. We talk about this. The top of it's so insane, but I still feel like the race is wide open. Like you could easily say Devers, you could easily say Jose Ramirez, you can easily say Judge or Trout, and any of them could be right. But then you look down, you got Vlad Jr. down there, you have Buxton down there, you have a couple other guys that could probably sneak their way into consideration. But it's just that I feel like anyone could still win this award in the American League.
Yeah, I mean it's possible. I mean, any of those top 6 or 7 guys that we've talked about could do it, and then maybe you throw in Vlad Jr. just because we know how hot he can get. So but of course, like I say, with Vlad Jr., it's just one of those deals where he has to be the best hitter in baseball by a pretty good margin. Because if not, you take in you kind of the fact that he plays first. He plays a very mediocre first base defensively, and he's a atrocious base runner. I mean, you have to take that into account, but he has to be insane at the plate, and it's kind of like Yordan Alvarez too. We didn't even talk about him. He's been the best hitter in the American League, probably. I mean, he's been insane this year. A 311 average, 403 on base, and a 623 slugging. He's got a 193 WRC plus, which is tied with Mike Trout for the highest in the big leagues. I mean, he's been or highest in the American League. I think Goldschmidt's is actually higher, but he's been insane. But he's a DH, so it's hard to call him the best player because he DHs and he doesn't play any defense. So, um, you compare him, it's kind of the tiebreaker. I mean, you compare him, and he's got similar numbers to Ramirez, Judge, and Mike Trout, and but they all do a lot of things. Judge is playing center field this year, so definitely a difference there. But
Yeah, it has been. So let's go ahead and wrap up the show with our players of the week. So who do you have for your hitter this week?
So my hitter this week is I'm actually going to go with Michael Harris. He has had a gigantic week. The guy that obviously the Braves called up, I think about 3 weeks ago now.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's played about. I think he's played 22 games. We said earlier. So, but this week in 6 games, he's hit 478 with a 500 on base, an 870 slugging percentage with 2 home runs. That goes along with great defense in center field, which was badly needed when the Braves called him up. That's really the main reason they called him up. And then good base running too. He hasn't stolen a base this week, but he's taken first to third a few times. He's looked really, really, really good. The plate discipline needs to get a little bit better with the walks. He hadn't walked very much, but he is keeping the strikeouts down pretty well. His chase rate's kind of high, but he swings a lot. He's good at making contact. And he's been fantastic for the Braves. So definitely Michael Harris, you got to watch out for. 21-year-old rookie. He's actually the youngest player in the big leagues. He's like a month younger than Wander Franco.
Wow, I didn't know that at all. Michael Harris just seemed like he gave a little bit of life to that Braves team at the time. I don't think it's quite that much of a coincidence that shortly after he got called up, they go on this really long streak. I think what are they 16-2 or 16-3 in the month or
16-3
something?
now. They lost tonight.
Yeah, 16-3 in the month of June so far. Like, I mean, of course that's Ronald Acuna being Ronald Acuna and stuff, but it kind of lines up with when he kind of got called up. They, after the first couple games, they've made a little bit of a run. So he's definitely added, a key part to that team and what he's done so far in the year, let alone what he did this week. It's been really, really nice to see what Michael Harris been able to do that. For my hitter this week, I went with Mike Trout. Usually a layup pick any week you want to pick it. But honestly, on the overall stats, it's not going to jump off the board. A 267 average, a 353 on base. But why I really picked him is he had 5 homers this week. But the real story was that he hit 4 of them in a 4-game, or he hit 5 of them, but in 4 games against the Mariners over the weekend, he hit the go-ahead home run in each game to give his team the win.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive, and obviously, Mike Trout can do that. So,
Yeah.
but the one cool thing about that is I think that's the team that Mike Trout in his career has hit the best against. I was watching one of those games, and they were talking about how he had hit like it was his highest. His stats were the best against the Mariners out of any team. So it's kind of like you get a guy like Mike Trout, and then he's just kills one team above all other ones. It's like, my God, they probably want to get rid of him.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's really the reason I wanted to do it, is because I thought that stat was pretty fun to hear and see, and something that I had never seen before, and I think it was the first time that had ever been done. I
I'm
want to
not
say it
sure
was the
if
first time that had ever been done for 4 straight games at least,
that might be it.
in
Yeah.
in one series to be able to do that. So pretty interesting. But who'd you have for your pitcher this week?
So my pitcher I went with this week, and honestly, there weren't a ton of good pitching options this week. I don't, for whatever reason, but I went ahead and went with um, Garrett Cole. He had a start the other day. He flirted with a no hitter again, but Garrett Cole pitched a 2 start guy, 13 and a third innings. Um, a .68 ERA, which means he just gave up 1 run in those 13 and a third innings. And that start against against the Rays, I think he had 7 2/3, 7 1/3 or something, and he gave up the 1 hit, but he had 12 strikeouts, 3 walks in that start, which was incredible. And Garrett Cole is pitching extremely well right now. And I know people like to hate on him because he's a sticky stuff merchant and whatever, but he's also one of the best pitchers in the game. and unfortunately, he's on the Yankees, which makes him also somebody that people don't like for that reason too. Um, but he's doing extremely well, and he's having a great year. And I think if you look at this at the end of the year, you're going to come back to see that Garrett Cole's going to be up high up on that list of Cy Young candidates, even though right now there's a few other guys probably ahead of him.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were worried, especially late last season after that, was Garrett Cole all the sticky stuff guy, like, because his performance really did dip. But he's shown this year that he's been able to adapt without having that. And he's been the Garrett Cole we kind of all expected him and what he's been for most of, since 2017 or 2018 when he got to Houston. He's been that guy this year. So he's really turned around even without that and adapted. So, it's always great when your top pitchers in the game can, evolve over time and change with how things are going and be at the same level. So it's been really cool to see Garrett Cole, and especially when you mentioned that him flirting with that no hitter, it was something special as well there. For my pitcher this week, I ended up going with San Francisco Giants pitcher Logan Webb. 2 starts this week, both 7-inning starts. One was against the Royals, one against the Braves. Gave up 1 run throughout the 2, had 3 walks, had 16 strikeouts. Just a really good week from him. He had a what is that actually line up? I got to get back. It was a .64 ERA, 241 FIP. Logan Webb struggled to start off the season. It's really turned it around and been another key piece in that Giants rotation with Carlos Rodon. But really good week from him, and kind of what you would expect from a guy who really broke out last year and is the top of the rotation guy for the San Francisco Giants.
Yeah, and to further elaborate on what Logan Webb a little bit, a lot of people have talked about him not being as good this year as he was last year, and I mean, he doesn't have a 272 FIP this year, but he's been really good. I mean, he's got a 3.26 ERA on the season, a 3.06 FIP. I mean, he's getting on the ball on the ground at a 57% rate. He looked great in that start yesterday. I watched him, with it being against Atlanta. I mean, I think Logan Webb's a guy that going forward, he's going to continue to be a really, really good. He's not a one-hit wonder last year. He's going to be a really good pitcher for a long time if he stays healthy.
Yeah, and he just throws a hard sinker,
Yep.
and with the slider and the changeup he has,
Slider and change have been great too.
Yeah, they have been. They've been really good, and with the hard sinker, being able to have the 3 different pitches that head 3 different ways, but can all come out of the same slot. That's really, really hard to hit. And you have a guy who throws a hard one in, and then a hard slider down and away, and then a changeup that comes out of the hand, just like those 2, but then just starts straight down. He's been really good, and he's been a real revelation for the Giants team, because he was not like a high-rated prospect or anything. I think when he graduated, he was the 7th ranked prospect in that system or something like that. And the Giants are not one that are ever known to have a strong farm system. They're just one of those teams that always just find to develop guys out of nowhere. But Logan Webb has been really good this year, and you mentioned people haven't really been giving him the due this year because he was so good last year, and he hasn't lived up quite to that yet. But he's been really good. And I think he kind of started a little slow, so I think that kind of adds to it a little bit as well. But you got anything else you want to wrap up on?
I think that's pretty much it. Just I hope everyone stays cool here for the next couple weeks. Still really hot across the U.S. and we'll got the holidays coming up and in a couple weeks, the 4th of July, and I know we're almost the last week of June, so time's flying by. Um, and just hope everyone stays safe out there.
Yeah, I echo that as well. Hope everyone stays safe, and we'll keep bringing it to you each week here on the Bat Flip podcast. So thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys next week.